And I think they are going to answer this. Because we still have to present the suicide note. This is going on for a really long time. Also, I needed to mark there. Mr. Cantabella, I'd like to apologize for putting too much pressure on your daughter. Only your words can bring her back from the brink of madness. Let her hear the truth from her own father. All according to your plan, Layton. You've driven Espella into a corner in order to push me to the wall. I had no other choice. Espella, please listen to me. You haven't done anything wrong. You didn't cause that accident. You have suffered so much thinking that you were Bezella. I must take the blame for that. You, Mr. Cantabella. I sacrificed everything to make up for what I've done. But all I managed to do was inflict more pain upon others. Is that not so, Darklaw? Now that you are willing to talk, Mr. Cantabella, would you mind telling us your story? Yours as well as Espella's and Miss Darklaw's. Very well. Hey, Epic Otter. I've been flipping out on Revelations. I am in disbelief. That's what I am. Kind of despairing the entire time. She's just traumatized. Okay. This story too began when I was a young lad. When Newton and I were still youths, full of dreams and hope. As you already know, we discovered the underground ruins, and deep within them lay that accursed bell. Bell of Ruin. At the time, we still lacked the knowledge to decipher any of the writings we found there. This bell is magnificent. It's bound to make the most beautiful sound. I have an idea. Why don't we make this bell the symbol of our town? How do you propose to do that? Let's build a bell tower for it, then we can ring it on special occasions. Not a bad idea. And it's settled. When we grow up, let's do it. Okay, just don't forget about it. Two of us chose different paths in life. I studied management in London, while Newton devoted himself to the study of the natural sciences. And then you made a fortune following the invention of a new anesthetic. We both got married around that time, and each of us had a daughter. You mean Espella was born shortly after your company gained funding? That's right. We eventually returned to our hometown and set about realizing our childhood dream. I want to say that I'm sure that they're not meaning it in this context, but the way the words were stringed together, it makes it sound like Belduke and Mr. Cantabella got married to each other rather than, married to other people. And that makes the idea of having two daughters a little tough. You'd have to go through some other ways to get daughters that way. Having built the bell tower in the middle of the town square, we retrieved the bell itself from the underground ruins. We aspired to make it a symbol of prosperity for this unindustrialized town. The bell was to be officially displayed during the annual fire festival. It would be rung in the morning following the night of celebration. Pardon the interruption, but at the time, were you aware of the meaning behind the bell's name? Obviously, we were not. Thinking back to my ignorance at the time, a chill now runs down my spine. Newton and I went to the bell tower the day before the festival. Only one more day to go. We've waited a long time for this. That we have. This town will no longer be the same after tomorrow. The bell weighed so much that ringing it was not easy. We tackled that problem by constructing a special mechanism, which we installed in the belfry.
Daddy, I want to hear the bell. Can I make it ring? Daddy, please, let me ring it.
Spella, who was there with us, was utterly enchanted by the bell. She wasn't a bad child, but she was very stubborn and would rarely listen to me when she wanted something. I told her a story to try and convince her to leave the bell alone.
Spella, listen carefully. You mustn't ring this bell.
But why? Why can't I, Daddy?
You know about Bezella, the witch.
Uh-huh. She's an evil fire witch who uses magic to hurt people.
If you ring this bell, Bezella will come out and possess you.
Possess me? You mean I'll turn into Bezella?
That's right, Spella. When Bezella possesses someone, she uses them to do terrible things. That's why you must never ring this bell, sweetheart.
I understand, Daddy.
There's a good girl.
Well, then why give her the key to go up there? The legend of Bezella has been passed around these parts for centuries. Probably originated from beliefs of the tribes that populated this area in the past. What I told Spella was just a silly story that I invented for the occasion. It was only meant to stop her from ringing the bell. I could not have imagined that it would have such far-reaching consequences. It's all coming back to me now. I remember that day. On the day of the fire festival, just around the time when the preparations ended and everything was about to begin, I sneaked out of our house. Can it be snuck? Snuck is a word, right? Sneaked. I don't think that's... Sneaked is not right. Right? Not like Phoenix Wright, but right as in correct. I took Mum's pendant with me. Aha. Your mother's pendant? Do you mean this one? Yes, it belonged to my mum. We needed to limit access to the bell, so we made 2 keys. We decided to make them into pendants, and each gave one to our respective wives. Both are needed in order to access the belfry. Saw you and Mr. Belduc use them, so I told Eve to meet me at the bell tower.
Daddy says Bezella will come out if I ring the bell, but if I do it just a little... I want to try it while the festival is going on. I hope Eve doesn't forget her mum's pendant.
So it is just as I thought, Miss Darklaw. You are Mr. Belduc's daughter. Well done, Inquisitor. I was almost afraid you would fail to make that connection. What in the... This is too much for one day. I would admit, this is a lot for one day. This is a lot. Especially for the people of this town. This is like a ton. Within like a matter of hours, they've been told that their lives are fake, magic's not real, witches aren't real, the town is fake, their lives are fake, their names are fake, their past is fake, like just everything is fake. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. You know, she was sitting calmly in the cage the whole time, admitting she was Bezella. The other thing is that she was also kind of this like passive, stuck in a mind prison state when she was in the real world trial as well. So that was kind of weird. I mean, I guess that could have been alchemy of some sort. Sad you missed the company reveal. But why the father survived And where are the mothers at? The mothers probably died during the fire. They'll probably reveal that. Some shippers were probably on board that. Storyteller Belduke Fix, all for 3 fans. Why would he leave the bell tower after that happened? Guess they have their niche. Tiny, tiny niche. Everyone's gonna lose their minds. Their entire reality has been flipped on them. Yeah, I'm honestly, I'm kind of surprised there's not like yelling and screaming and rioting going on right now. That totally seems like a fair reaction to everything that's been happening. Order in the court. Lady Darklaw, you mean to say that you're Sir Belduke's daughter? Yes, my real name is Eve Belduke. I'm the alchemist's daughter. This is unbelievable. I also sneaked out of my house that evening, clutching my mother's pendant in hand. You think sneaked is correct? Could be either or, but you're no editor. Sneaked. I did just as you asked me to, did I not, Espella? You know what you're asking me to do? You're asking me to save right now. So that's what I'm gonna do.
Espella, my mum's going to be so angry if she notices I took the pendant. Don't worry so much. I just really want to ring that bell. I want to hear it.
I rang the bell against my father's warning, and so Bezella possessed me. Because of me, the town and everyone in it. They're all gone. No, it's not your fault. Stop blaming yourself. Supposedly, the former inhabitants of this area also used to fall unconscious upon the sound of that bell. Perhaps they experienced a similar nightmare. It was I who brought the Bell of Ruin into this town. The one to blame for this calamity is not some witch, it's me. I brought destruction upon this town. I am Bezella. Spella, you're going to drive your dad crazy if you keep repeating that. Seeing you like this is giving me a strong feeling of deja vu. Eve, how can you be so evil? Are you happy now? I'm afraid we're in the dark as regards to Miss Darklaw's sense of deja vu. Only 4 people survived the fire. Only 4. Spella and Eve, who were in the belfry, and the only 2 residents who did not participate in the festival, Newton and I. And where were you at the time, if you permit my asking? We were investigating those fateful ruins. That's why we didn't notice anything until it was too late. And it was getting near the time at which we planned to ring the bell, so we headed towards the town. Then we saw it. The town had been burnt to ashes, the air shimmering from the heat. That's too awful for words. We searched for survivors, sick with anxiety. Eventually, we found our daughters in the bell tower. Spella was unresponsive, like a doll. Eve was crying at her side. Our relief at having found them vied with terror caused by the disaster. The worst night of my life ended, pierced with the first rays of sunshine. But then, it seemed Espella was already lost to us. We had lost her to Bezella. She wouldn't speak, eat, or even leave her room. She thought she was Bezella, and that she had destroyed the town. I couldn't get that out of her head. Now, what she saw from the bell tower must have been so terrifying. But it wasn't shock from what she had seen. My own words had put her in that state. Had I only not told her that stupid story. We had been grasping at straws, trying to find a way to save Espella's mind. But whatever we did, her eyes would remain impassive and empty. In the end, I came upon a certain idea that offered us a glimpse of hope. What was it? The suspense, it's too much for my aging heart. I believe I may know what it was. Can you just let the man finish his story? It was the only way to get through to little Espella. Inquisition? What are you talking about? What was it?
Have a look.
Present the book. We discovered this in Espella's room. And that is... It's a handmade picture book. The illustrations and handwriting are truly exquisite. That's the first story I wrote. I made it for Espella after that dreadful fire. Oh, the storyteller's first story. It was but a simple children's story. The plot was very straightforward. The townsfolk joined forces to banish evil witches who served Bezella.
Espella, do you understand now? You aren't Bezella. Bezella is somewhere out there, sending out other witches to do bad things to the people of our town.
Witches, magic, the town perishing in flames. Espella was mentally broken and I couldn't get through to her in any other way. I talked to her as if magic and witches were real, avoiding any mention of that fire.
Daddy, a witch is real.
Espella spoke to me for the first time in so many days. I was beyond myself with joy and replied without thinking.
Oh, yes, they are. They're hiding in the town, among the people.
But it's just a fairy tale.
I was desperate. I feared she would close herself off to me again. Now in hindsight, I see what an utter fool I was. I made an irreversible mistake yet again.
No, it's not. Everything your daddy writes comes true. The bad witches will get their comeuppance. I will write a story about it.
And so I wrote another story for my daughter, a story about mischievous witches getting caught. This time I had the story acted out in front of Espella. You had it acted out. Back then, I wasn't the only one tormenting myself over the mental state of my daughter. Newton was going through it too. His own daughter had been badly scarred by the event. Isn't that right, Eve? My father and I repaired a building that had survived the fire and continued to live in this town. Espella wasn't even able to leave her room. We couldn't leave her behind when she needed all the help she could get. Mr. Cantabella showed us this book one day. Then he made an unusual request of us.
I'd like to make this story real. Would you be willing to help me do so?
To our surprise, he was entirely serious. Seeing that, we gladly offered our help. A story about evil-doing witches getting caught and punished, and Bezella the source of them all.
Were you paying attention, Espella? Witches got what they deserved, and peace has been restored to the town.
Espella smiled at the end. Then she whispered to herself,
It wasn't me.
and I saw her smile. I felt as if something broke inside me. I couldn't afford to let her be sad again. Maybe if Bezella were to exist in this town, Espella would stop thinking she herself harbored the Great Witch. I continued writing stories about witches. Eve and I would act them out for Espella. And gradually, the number of characters in my stories increased. That was, of course, largely due to the ongoing reconstruction of the town. How much reconstruction? It wasn't anything on a big scale. I simply paid people to move in and act out their roles. But I began to think that I would need more than that. The story had to be real. To make a lie seem true, you resorted to even more lies. Yes, I was certain that was the only way. How did I do so? I remembered about Newton's research. He was working on a certain medicine. It was a kind of tranquilizer made from local plants that he was testing at the time. But it was difficult to put into practical use. The substance had a danger of causing unconsciousness and hypnosis. I can see how that could be used to cause much harm, supposing it fell into the wrong hands. At the same time, it was just what I needed for my ambitious project. I contacted the government, and that was the beginning of what came to be known as Project Labyrinthia. A town with human test subjects, all in a state of long-term hypnosis. You devised that plan solely for the sake of your daughter. Yes, we acquired the land, which had been laid to waste by the fire. The new town was slowly becoming populated. Gradually, the rules of Labyrinthia were established. It was to be a town where magic and witches were a reality to the residents. All of this was possible thanks to the drug. The test subjects were exposed to it through the ink used in the pen of the story, right? Yeah, you said that like 3 times, man. That's right. It was the dangerous drug developed by Newton. About 10 years have passed since then. Even now, the town continues to change. Honestly, the storyteller is easily one of the worst fathers you have seen in any media. He literally did everything wrong. I don't know about that. I certainly can't think of any fathers that are worse off the top of my head. But I can think of, in media that is, but I can certainly think of worse fathers than this guy. At least he was, there for his child, in some abstract way. He's up there with Buck Cluck and the dude from Invincible. I have no idea who those people are. He's not evil, but kept taking actions with major negative consequences. I funding and absurdity aside, I think in a storybook like story, that's not necessarily something grounded in reality. I feel like this is something that fathers would do. Fathers are typically written in this way of doing whatever they can to save their kids and either ignoring the consequences of their actions or understanding the consequences but not caring. There's an anime out there. This is I feel like if I say that, okay, I will say the name of the anime, and think to Full Metal Alchemist. I won't mention any characters or anything like that, but if you watch Full Metal Alchemist, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And like, you can look at the characters that I'm thinking of and think like, yeah, that's probably the worst father I've ever heard of, or that's the worst mother that I've ever heard of, or grandparent, or wherever line you want to go down. But it's just one of those things where people will do whatever it takes for their children. And I don't think the line that he took was necessarily a bad one. You know, he told his kid a harmless story, and his kid got mentally scarred from it. If your kid wasn't eating, drinking, sleeping, or talking for like days at a time, you know, what would you do? What are you going to do to save your kid? Those are things that you got to think about. You know, his actions are crazy in hindsight, but in the moment, it's like, what do I do to save my kid? You know, you gotta look at it from that perspective too. How's the game? Like what Epic Otter said, it's crazy. Is it more nuts than other Layton games due to it being a crossover? I don't think the crossover really has much to do with the craziness, but this is without a doubt the most insane story I have ever seen in a video game in my entire life. And there's been some crazy ones out there. At least 3 of those are Professor Layton games. Project Labyrinthia. And all this was done for one girl. Isabella was only able to be herself when she lived within my story. Oh, the irony of it. Only within a world in which Bezella was real could Ispella's tragic memories be sealed. Bars. All this while Eve was assisting me. I was the first shade. As soon as the story began, I disappeared from the scene. If Isabella was to see some magic, then someone had to don this robe. That's the robe of invisibility. I gave Isabella new memories so that she could live in this town with everyone else. I also sealed her memory of her friend Eve. What? My existence was too strongly connected to her memory of the fire. Afterwards, I returned as Darklaw, a stranger to Isabella. But even if you were doing this for Ispella's sake, that's just going too far. I made that choice. I do not regret the past 10 years. Meanwhile, my father was supporting Labyrinthia from behind the scenes in his own way. Okay, Lady Darklaw, or Eve, or whatever you want to call her, she looks like she's 24 to like 36. But Isabella looks like she's like 16 to 20 or something like that. There's no way that these two are the same age. I guess Darklaw maybe had a growth spurt or something. I don't know. Ispella's so short. Meanwhile, my father was supporting Labyrinthia from behind the scenes in his own way. Do you mean his contributions as an alchemist? My father's knowledge of medicine was indispensable for this town to function. The hallucinogenic ink was my father's work as well. So it was. Newton and Eve sacrificed more than anyone else for the sake of Isabella in this town. I will forever be indebted to them. I wanted to save Isabella just like you. But then there's still something I don't understand. Why were you trying to destroy this fake world? In the end, you chose to betray Isabella and Mr. Cantabella. Oh, but I've told you already, have I not? It was your revenge against Mr. Cantabella for choosing to end the story, correct? I wonder whether that was the true reason. Professor? Would Miss Belduke really betray them merely because she did not want the story to end? I dare say there was another considerably more important reason. Yet another reason. No need to frown in dismay, Mr. Wright. Please leave this to me as I present the suicide note. Well then, let's hear what the Inquisition has to say. The other reason that led to that is gonna be that. Let me catch up on chat real quick, since we already know what the answer is going to be. Since you don't know about Layton, what sort of setting does it have? Layton games as a whole, from my experience, are games set in the real world, but they always have some sort of element to them that seems, we'll say, like magical to them. So I think it's probably best to say that they're like real world mixed with fantasy. Storyteller just wanted to protect his child, but really went too far. I mean, that's fair. But I still maintain that, like, in hindsight, it's very easy to say that. Your biggest problem with the storyteller is the game is written as though they want you to feel bad for him every chance they get, especially with the one final thing at the end, which you'll see soon here. However, you find it incredibly hard to feel bad for someone who constantly did all these terrible things to people around him and constantly lied to his own daughter, like he never really learned. So, I don't disagree. But what are the alternatives? Like, what would you do in his position? Which I recognize is a very difficult thing to extrapolate because, you know, some of you probably don't have kids. And even if you do have kids, you probably have never been placed in a situation where your child is like locked in a mind prison and, you know, can't do anything. It seems like a very serious issue, you know? This is why Layton is so adamant in finding out the truth. I still feel like all of this is kind of pointless, to be honest. Like, I get that, you know, all of this truth coming out is nice and all that, but it just doesn't seem necessary. Whereas major tunnel vision from desperation on top of not paying his due research on the shiny bell and the ruins. Yeah, there's that too. To pretty much get everyone back to their normal lives. Honestly, at this point, Layton or Phoenix would be better fathers for a spell. Okay, that's crazy. Pretty tragic in the end. Yeah, have not played this in years, but rewatching the finale in particular, putting aside that you like the craziness of the twist, you are getting a bit of an emotional trip from the traumatized Dispella. So Epic Otter mentioned earlier that the game wants you to feel bad for the father or for Mr. Cantabella. I don't actually feel like the game wants you to feel bad for him. I think the game wants you to feel bad for Espella. But I feel like, and again, this is going to sound crazy from me, but I feel like you should feel bad for Mr. Cantabella, the storyteller. I legitimately feel like it's so easy to condemn his actions, and justifiably so, you know? You should condemn his actions. But if your kid gets shot on the street, you know, you're going to do whatever it is that's necessary to make sure that they survive. And sometimes that means going to extremes. Do you gotta chop out your own heart and give it to your kid? Do you gotta chop off your own arm, give it to your kid? You gotta give them blood? Do you gotta go kill somebody? People will go through crazy things for their family. And the consequences are always secondary, if they're even thinking of the consequences, which they probably aren't. This reveal hits for you still. Darklaw became a baddie. Nocturnal geckos linguistics. I actually like Darklaw as a villain here. And you know what? I'm going to throw this out here as well. I actually like the path that Darklaw is going here, because this was just turning out to be, oh, I'm Darklaw, I'm the Great Witch, that's ruining everything. But it turns out Darklaw is just, one of those people of, I've been participating in a fake story for so long, and my father died because he couldn't take it anymore. I'm going to put this to an end, and I'm going to stop this. And it's one of those things where it's like you're an antagonist, but you're actually the good guy, or the good person, the what have you. You're an antagonist, but you're pursuing the correct end goal, I suppose. So with Buck Cluck, he is the dad from Disney's Chicken Little. You would say he's admittedly a worse father than storyteller. He is more or less emotional, abusive to his son, who is a great baseball player like his dad. However, his dad discourages him at every chance he gets. He's like, forget about it, son. There's no way you could do that. He also is literally never there for his son. Okay. The story is definitely either hate it or love it. You feel like it's off the wall. It's very off the wall. Storyteller is such a nonsense villain. I think if you think about the storyteller in the context of like he's trying to do evil things, I think, yeah, he's a nonsense villain. I don't consider the storyteller a villain in this game. I think Darklaw is the villain, but a villain that is pursuing the deconstruction of something horrific, I guess you could say. You're still too young for that. Yeah, well, just put yourself in the shoes, man. What you gonna do? By the way, if you run out of HP, Espella is still executed for being a witch, despite the fact that her father is still alive. I figured as much. I had died yesterday during an unfortunate spot, and she got torched. It's very, very silly. Matter of fact, we're just gonna hover over that just in case. You can understand him being willing to do anything for his child, but the storyteller is so separated from Espella's life that he isn't even aware that she's on trial for murder multiple times, which hurts the sympathetic aspect, you think. I would agree with that too. I think that's one of the big issues that he has, and something that he needs to explain. Why is he so detached? Does he feel it's necessary because that's just how the story was written? He needs to be away from her so that he doesn't remind her of those days. I mean, that's why Eve was removed from the whole situation. So if he could just reaffirm that that's the reason, I feel like that's a valid thing. However, him not knowing that his kid is going on trial and things like that, that's definitely not good. Eve is trying to bring out the memories or trying to manipulate the story so that Espella can get back to normal somehow, there's every reason to believe that the storyteller wouldn't know, especially if he's not paying that much attention. If you've been controlling a town for 10 years and everything has gone exactly the way you have planned it, you're going to get complacent. Why would you have reason to believe that something is going to go amiss and go wrong when it hasn't gone wrong in 10 years? Darklaw is actually the hero here. See, yeah, like that's what I think as well. I think, well, I still think she's an antagonist. But I do think that she is playing the hero role as an antagonist. From a player perspective, just finishing off the trial at this is a company doing a human experiment. Let's go home. Need more answers revealed in a proper sense of closure. Let's continue. I mean, like, I get why they want to go this far. It makes sense that they want closure for Espella. In my opinion, I feel like they needed to have all of these gargantuan reveals after clearing Espella's name, because I think it would have been more impactful that way. At least so far. You don't know if you'd say Darklaw is a hero, since she's still traumatizing Espella, but you could definitely understand her anger. Fair. I think the storyteller just wanted Espella to live a good life, but Darklaw had enough of the lies. Yeah. Trying to figure out why Darklaw tried to frame Espella for theft and assault at the start. How did they see the witches that kept pursuing them in London? Why did they try to take Espella back to this town? I'm sure we'll get reasoning for this, I would imagine, but my inclination here in regards to Darklaw's plan is the storyteller doesn't really know what's going on. So if Espella can become a shade, maybe she can get her to get her memories back or something like that. Because obviously, burning Espella at the whatchamacallit, it wouldn't kill her. She'd become a shade and she'd go to the whatchamacallit. Maybe she'd learn stuff or, something. I don't know. I don't see the end goal either, but I feel like that's
Have a look.
the thing. Or that's the end goal. I don't know about all the magic that was happening in London, though. That I feel like they're not going to explain that. This letter was Miss Belduke's real motive. What is this? I think I've seen it before. That's the letter written by Mr. Belduke for Mr. Cantabella. It's also Mr. Belduke's suicide note. My dear friend, I hope you can forgive me for leaving this world of my own will. What I have done cannot be forgiven. I can never escape from it. Something was tormenting Mr. Belduke. It became too much for him to bear and drove him to suicide. Past 10 years, I thought Father was glad to be helping Cantabella. Little did I know, he was suffering terrible anguish all this time, just like I'm suffering terrible anguish by not saving just in case. Cantabella twisted the lives of so many people for the sake of his daughter. Was the story not to be a glorified lie, stripping so many of what little happiness they had? All those years, Father was racked by a crushing sense of guilt. His agony culminated in the incident of 3 months ago, Mr. Belduke's death. Wait, they're not going to say that that's a freak accident, are they? They're not going to say that they just covered the entire tower with an invisibility cloak. And then, oh, there was a storm happening and lightning just happened to strike the bell tower right there. And it burned the cloak. Like, that would... I would not be very happy with that. Before Labyrinthia was created, certain things had to be concealed in order to seal a spell's memories. Had she seen them, she would have remembered. They were simply too dangerous to her. One of them was me. Spella's friend, Eve, had to be reborn as a shade and disappear into the forest. The next thing was the bell tower. I see, had she seen it, it would have been certain to stir up those traumatic memories. Memories of the legendary fire. The only way to prevent that was to erase the bell tower from Labyrinthia. But how could you do that? Using the same method as with this robe. Or you could have, just... Bear with me here. I know this is crazy. But you could have just... tore down the bell tower. Put the bell somewhere. Buried it underground or something. Wouldn't have that been crazy? Oh my goodness. Who could have thought of such a thing? A robe of invisibility. In short, we covered up the tower with a huge robe. Oh my gosh. Why are the things that I'm saying coming true? Please stop. Although it wasn't as easy as it sounds. In other words, the bell tower had been there all this time. Only the townspeople couldn't see it, is that correct? Indeed. I don't know what to say. At any rate, the situation changed due to that lightning strike 3 months ago, did it not? It was a most unfortunate incident. The lightning set the bell tower's cover on fire. That cover was quickly consumed by flames, revealing that abominable bell tower. The beginning of all this, the Bell of Ruin, appeared before us. 'Twas mockery of our efforts. A tower emerging from the flames. Must have seemed like a sign of divine anger to Mr. Belduke. A sign that no matter how you attempt to conceal your sins, the truth will eventually float up to the surface. Having realized this, Father chose death. He was such a kind-hearted man. I didn't have an inkling of what he had been going through. To him, the participation of Labyrinthia's people within this project was not voluntary. Even though they had themselves signed the contract, I believe he felt those people were being deceived. Father took his life because of you, Cantabella. I find it incredible that out of the many games I've played, this is the one that is the most insane. Your duty has been fulfilled. Not even the most insane part yet? Oh my gosh. It just won't end. Just won't end. Now you know why I did what I did. Lost my father 3 months ago. That day my revenge began. Revenge? The first step of my plan was to rewrite the story. What did you say? As president of Labyrinth Inc., you had to spend most of your time in London. Over the past few years, you were coming to Labyrinthia only for the parades. So naturally, I knew you would never notice if the story were slightly changed. That explains it. I couldn't help thinking there was something strange going on. Mr. Cantabella is Espella's father, after all. He wouldn't have made Espella a witch in his story. Espella was... a witch? When did that happen? How could you have known, after all? Let me fill you in on the details. Espella has already been tried once within the witch's court. Impossible. Why? How could you? You knew the risk that would carry. Look at you. What a fine author of that grand story you are. You left all the work in Labyrinthia to me. Meanwhile, you were making millions for yourself in London. What a pathetic excuse for a father. You didn't even notice that your precious little Espella was in such danger. Okay, now they're painting him out to be a bad father. You know, in the sense of, you know, you're running your company instead of, you know, running your life and protecting the people that are closest to you. Miss Belduke, why did you do that to Espella? Do you even need to ask? Did it to unlock her memories? You mean, when the legendary fire took place, Espella was so traumatized that she closed herself off to the world. We were just little girls then. That tragic accident was too much for us to handle. I now understand why the trial at the start of the game was necessary and makes sense. It's because Labralum is actually an actual company, and they needed this actual person to not be... Well, no, they wanted them to plead guilty. Why? But it makes sense why they didn't just, like, magic her away to this, you know, secret town. They actually needed some sort of verdict. I still don't understand why she wanted her to plead guilty, though. This fictitious town was created as a facade to keep the truth away from Espella. But the weight of all these lies led my father to a suicide. Despite that, the person responsible for all this carried on as if nothing had happened. I couldn't forgive him. As Belduke's bereaved daughter, I had to have my revenge against both Cantabellas. Judge, this is the whole truth. Now you know the true identity of Bezella.
Objection!
Axel is speaking it into existence. I need to stop. I need to stop. Yeah, you could sell the bell. Yeah, that would perfectly be fine. It'd probably sell for a lot. Dump it in the ocean. The Bell of Ruin title only applies to a specific area and may do nothing outside of it. Exactly. Want to rehear the rest of the letter? He mentioned something about his daughter. He did, didn't he? And at the time, we thought he was mentioning the butler. As if like he took the butler in as his daughter, but that was not the case. Ooh, good callback. I forgot about that. I guess the idea was, if she's tried in London and her father has a big company in London, it'd make the news and smear him. Since that didn't work, she decided to sabotage the story. Ah, that's a good call right there. I like that explanation. You say this is the whole truth, but is that really the case? Professor, what are you going on about now? We have been provided with a clear picture of what happened to Espella so long ago. Nevertheless, we haven't yet heard your testimony. Don't be ridiculous. This will be the last testimony in this trial. Tell us about the night of the legendary fire. I request that you tell us your story. Who do you think you are, Inquisitor? not an inquisitor. I am merely one of the supporting characters within this tale. However, I'm very much interested in the truth. There's been a very long trial, of which this shall be the last interrogation. The court demands that the single other witness of the legendary fire provide us with her testimony. Very well. I still don't understand why they haven't called in, code 416 yet. There's only one truth. Nothing can change that. Actually, you actually first thought he meant someone else by his daughter because it was written oddly, but then just went with he meant the butler. Yeah, it was written oddly, but like there wasn't anybody else at the time to refer to, so he was the only, or she was the only person. It was written oddly because he was outing the butler as a she when the butler was pretending to be a boy. So that's why it was strange. But, maybe the storyteller, knew that or whatever. Layton's just treating this whole thing as another puzzle. He sure is. Isabella wanted to ring the bell no matter what, so we went up to the belfry. The festival celebrations had already started. The mechanism for ringing the bell was at a height even we could reach. The next thing I remember is coming to, running to Isabella's aid, her side. I was shaking her until she finally opened her eyes. The next moment, we saw that nightmarish view. All strength abandoned us, and we didn't know what to do. That was when we were found by my father and Mr. Cantabella. The bell could only be rung with a special mechanism. That's right. It was made in such a way that even a child could use it. It was probably constructed by my father. I suppose he wanted to make it possible for anyone to ring that bell. In light of the events that followed, that was clearly a very foolish decision. Mechanism for ringing the bell. I noticed something like that on a pillar when we went to the belfry earlier. I'd make better note of it in the court record. Oh, come on. Oh dear, fate can certainly be cruel. I have to agree. Only we had not discovered those ruins and brought that bell to our town. Or if we could have deciphered those ancient writings a little earlier. Moreover, only the groundwater in this area didn't cause that strange condition, and if only the lightning did not strike the bell tower, and if only Layton did not come into this town, and if only Lady Darklaw did not decide to ruin everything, and if only Sir Belduke didn't decide to take his life, and if only the Shades actually did their freaking job, and if only Phoenix Wright actually, failed or pled guilty in that trial. If only the world was filled with magic and witches. Unfortunately, Mr. Cantabella, the tragedy occurred. All that remains for us to do is seek out the truth. Not for the sake of vengeance, but for the sake of the future. Mr. Wright? Yes? You have been fighting fiercely to uncover the truth. This is the final interrogation. I trust you know what to do. I don't like this setting, by the way. Like, why are we still courtrooming this? It doesn't make any sense. To be honest, I have no idea what lies ahead. But whatever it is, there's no question we need to get to the bottom of it. It's got to be a light at the end of this tunnel. Alright, I need to ask a question. Can I beat this game in an hour? Yeah? Okay. Because today is Taco Tuesday. And so I gotta go get my tacos. I don't necessarily need to end in an hour, but like I need to be done with everything. And I figure like an extra hour to complete the game, and then maybe 10 to 45 minutes to talk about the game. I'm sure everybody and their mamas wants to talk about this ending once we get there. So I figure this is going to be a long one, but
Hold it!
yeah. So they went to the bell tower. Blah, blah, blah. You needed both pendants to access the belfry, correct? Spella asked me to bring my mother's pendant, so I did. That wasn't the only requirement, however. You also needed to solve a puzzle in order to use the contraption. I've always been a master puzzle solver. For me, it was child's play, literally. You solved it when she was a little girl. What's your excuse, Nick? Hey, I have different talents. Spella and Eve were best friends at the time. Eve is 2 years older than Spella. She used to be like a big sister to her. Well, the two of you went to the belfry. What happened next? I do feel like I felt like this has been something that's been building up for a while now, and that is that Eve actually rang the bell, and it wasn't Spella, but we'll see. Alright, what happened next? Festival celebrations had already started. The mechanism for the ringing the bell was at the height that even we could reach.
Hold it!
Well, even a little girl could ring the bell. Yes, easily. I intended to make it so that that bell could be rung on only be rung on special occasions. That's exactly why I put that puzzle in place to restrict access. You also divided the key to the belfry into two components as an extra precaution. I was careful, but the same cannot be said of Newton, who constructed the mechanism as a whole. He presumably wished to make it so that even our young daughters could use it, meaning strength was not a requirement. And that became his undoing. By the way, how old were the girls at that time? Spella was 6, Eve was 8. You see, that mechanism was the last thing I saw before falling unconscious. And then, or maybe it was the gato, you know? The cat was like, I'm gonna ring the bell. The next thing I remember is coming to and running to Spella's side. Oh, hold on. I gotta press this. You mean that you fell unconscious after the bell was struck? Yes, I believe so. Our peculiar condition causes an instant reaction. Our? The brain probably doesn't even have time to register the sound before consciousness is lost. It was almost as if a slice of time had been stolen from my life. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the floor. I lifted my head and saw Spella lying nearby. Sprang to my feet and ran to her side. And what about the situation in the town at that time? I was preoccupied with the Spella, so I didn't notice it to begin with. At that time, was Spella still unconscious? Yes, I panicked a little and took her into my arms, hoping she'd wake up. I was shaking her until she finally opened her eyes, and then we saw the nightmarish view. So it was you who woke Spella up, witness. Yes, it was me. She was out cold, curled up on the floor, until I shook her awake. Then as she came to, she turned to look at the town, to that nightmarish view stretching out before us. When you say nightmarish view, I can find no other words to describe it. We froze in terror at the sight. It took us a while to notice that smoke was creeping up the bell tower too. Our eyes filled up with tears, and we couldn't stop crying, perhaps because of the smoke. The town seemed like a fire dragon's playground. I was trembling with terror unlike anything I've known before. Dear me, merely imagining it now raises the hairs on my beard. All strength abandoned us, and we didn't know what to do. That was when we were found by my father and Mr. Cantabella.
Hold it!
You didn't leave the belfry until their arrival. Of course not. We were paralyzed with fear. It was an event so traumatizing it still haunts us. Spella fainted again when she saw the fire dragon. I was crying and wailing until our fathers found us. We went to the bell tower as it was a good vantage point. We weren't expecting to find our daughters there. Of course, neither suspected that at that point the disaster had been caused by the Bell of Ruin. Eve was in tears, sobbing violently. As for Spella, she was in a daze. Her face frozen in an expression of disbelief. She didn't know what was happening around her. Cannot say this with certainty, as my memories are a little vague. But I think I was trying to protect her.
Hang on!
Mr. Cantabella? I remember that very well, as if it happened yesterday. Cantabella, would you mind telling us what you saw?
Eve! Spella, are you all right?
Daddy!
Eve, what on earth happened here?
It was Bezella! Bezella the witch!
But Bezella? What are you talking about?
Bezella comes out whenever someone rings the bell, right?
What have you done? You didn't...
Oh, please, Mr. Cantabella, don't be angry. At Bezella.
Eve said it with a most serious look on her face. Please, Mr. Cantabella, don't be angry at her. When she said that, I grasped the situation. I realized what had transpired in the belfry. I thought to myself, I must protect these children. Eve. So sorry, Eve. Spella, sweetie. Dad, please forgive me. You've done all this for me. Bella, you're with us again. All this for me. Well. At last, it would appear we are one step away from the truth. Professor, you seem to already know what the truth is. Do I? That remains to be seen. Continue the interrogation, and we shall all know soon enough. Layton is such an unlikable character in this last trial here. Inquisitor Layton is such a suckafoo. You know that? Can you just not, please? Very well, the court agrees with Inquisitor Layton. Witness, continue your testimony. As you wish. Bella wanted to ring the bell no matter what, so we went up to the belfry. Right. I keep forgetting which one's the last one. Well, sorry for Eve, she's some scary stuff too. May not be showing it, but I bet it's painful for her to talk about all this. I cannot say I don't sympathize with Miss Belduke. However, the truth is of utmost priority. It must be exposed, even if the time comes with the witness herself. I think Miss Belduke isn't aware of the truth. Not sure what the professor has in mind, but let's trust him on this one. I'm sure we can unravel this mystery together. Alright, let's do our thing and grasp at straws. Grasp the truth. Alright, so the only piece of evidence that we have is the wheel. I need to save before I present this evidence. I have to find the right spot to present it, which is easier said than done. If I were to think about the game as it is designed, I think at this point right here is where we actually learn stuff. But I actually want to do this. Because I've mentioned before, Darklaw is super tall, and Espella is giga short. I'm sure I'm wrong. Actually, you know what? Let's use a hint coin. I might be wrong here. I am wrong here. Apparently I have to press again.
Hold it!
Blah, blah, blah. Roll up on the floor. Thing 2. Nightmare Sight. Observe.
Hang on!
Storyteller. I am no longer the storyteller. I'm Arthur Cantabella, president of Laburnum Inc., a pharmaceutical company. Yes, I know. That's my true identity. Okay, so Mr. Cantabella, is there anything in this testimony that you've heard that you'd like to expand on? No, there's nothing to add. Are you really sure about that? The expression on your face indicated otherwise. Afraid you are mistaken. By the way, I wanted to tell you I'm a big fan of Laburnum's flu syrup. The slogan's kind of catchy too. Hey you with the flu, Laburnum that illness, and feel good as new. I wrote that one. If I may interrupt, a small talk is irrelevant to the trial and probably of little interest to Mr. Cantabella, the company president. That's right, now, and witness continue testifying. What? The game told me to press there.
Hold it!
Oh. Gotta press her.
Hang on!
Excuse me, Espella. Are you okay? Yes, everything's fine. My apologies for bringing back such troubling memories. Nevertheless, you must endeavor to face them and overcome the power they hold over you. Yes, I remember it now. The fire dragon. I summoned it because I'm Bezella. No, Espella, it was just an illusion. No, you're wrong, Dad. It wasn't an illusion, it was a fact. If I hadn't rung the bell, none of this would have happened. Bezella is the bringer of disaster, and that's what I've done to our town. The accused run away. Quick, after her. She's run into the bell tower. Darn it, she's locked herself in. How did she do it? It's no use. We'll have to break down the door to get in. That girl, she's gone and... oh no. Is Bill Tunchlumilled herself. Stay away from me.